Let's move on to agenda item 6, Law and Licensing Committee report. Over to Chair Carey.
Thank you, Chair. The first agenda item is item 6.3. This is a Canyon Grove Academy waiver request. And the motion for the board is that the board approve Canyon Grove Academy's request for a waiver from Utah Administrative Code R277-552-5, paren 5.
Okay, the motion before the board is that the board approve Canyon Grove Academy's request for a waiver from Utah Admin Code R277-552-5, paren 5. Is that a legal paren thing? Is that, do I have to adopt that?
Parentheses.
Okay, I'll say it. I like it. Okay. With that distraction, let's go ahead and vote. And Member Davis stepped out. That passes unanimously. Back to you, Chair Carey.
Thank you, Chair. Next agenda item is 6.5, data sharing agreement with Liz Bernfeld. Oh, 6.4, excuse me. Thank you, Chair. This is item 6.4, and this is the Valley Academy Charter waiver request. The motion before the board is that the board approve Valley Academy Charter's request for a waiver from Utah Administrative Code R277-552-6.
Thank you. The motion before the board is that the board approve Valley Academy Charter's request for a waiver from Utah Admin Code R277-552-6. Let's go ahead and vote. That passes 10 in favor, 1 in opposition, coming from Member Bogus. Oh, that passes. Hold on one second. Clarify your. Did you not mean to hit?
I did not. I was reading something that I'm going to vote no on.
Okay. We do. So this passes unanimously. Member Bogus is a yes. So back to you, Chair Carey. Thank you, Member Bogus.
Thank you, Chair. Now, item 6.5, data sharing agreement with Liz Bernfeld. And the motion for the board is that the board approve the data sharing agreement with Liz Bernfeld, USBE 25007-0RA.
The motion before the board then is that the board approve the data sharing agreement with Liz Bernfeld, USBE 25007-0RA. Member Bogus.
Thank you. I found it interesting, Chair Carey, that this came through the committee because the board has rejected many data sharing agreements similar to this in the past. Is there a reason you guys decided this one was different from those we've previously rejected?
Chair Carey, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I can only speak for myself in that I found that the data being requested was relevant to advancing public education rather than a particular sub-interest. That's why I supported it. Other committee members could address it on their own. But I think that was the consensus, that the benefits to public ed and our access to the data was adequately protected in this this request for data. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
May I follow up?
You do follow up? Yes. So then I've got Vice Chair Wood.
So what I don't see in here, and a lot of pages, so maybe I missed it. But what I don't see in here is third-party disclosure. And when you're in a research institution, is she not sharing this with anybody else? This is a single person release?
Chair Carey.
If I may, I'd direct that to staff if Director Chalice is here. I believe that's standard language in our agreements, but it's worthy of being addressed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Director Chalice, would you like to respond to that question from Member Bogus?
Yeah, I'd love to. Director Chalice, or Katie Chalice, Director of Privacy. It's the hardest part of my job is remembering what so in answer to your question, so Liz Bernfeld, as a part of her doctoral work, I believe that her advisor and potentially, oh no, not I believe, I know that some of her professors that she'd be working with, which are listed under additional researchers on page 17 of the agreement, that they too would have access to some of this personally identifiable or the data that she's requesting. So to answer your question, those could be considered third parties, her people that she's working with, but it wouldn't leave outside outside of BYU.
May I follow up?
Thank you. Follow up.
Yeah, so then, if they have access to it, why are we not entering into agreements with them as well?
I would say they are a party to the agreement. Typically when a doctoral student or a university enters into an agreement, there are, anywhere between like 2 and 5 people who will have access to the data. That's what's happening here too. She's the primary researcher, but as a part of her work, those other 3 individuals may also have sort of incidental access in supporting her, which is, again, that's the standard, typically.
May I have one last one?
Sure.
So then who's accountable if this gets leaked?
Brigham Young University would be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Wood?
And I believe as I listened to committee that this student information will not be identifiable once it's securely, and I mean, that's the major difference that I see in this release is that we are not tying together students and all their information and it's identifiable. She'll be doing the research based on that number that you use that I don't remember the name of right now. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So technically it is identifiable in the sense that there is a unique identifier. But if disclosed, that particular unique identifier that we're sharing is probably the safest version of an identifier that we have because it only can be tied back to our systems. It's the USBE specific student ID rather than like an LEA student ID or an SSID. So identifiable, yes, but the safest version of that we offer.
Thank you. Member Kelly?
So this is the first of these requests that I've seen, so I did have some questions in terms of, I think what you partially addressed it. So in this request, will personally identifiable information from individual students be available to this researcher?
Who's that directed to? Is that, you were looking at Vice Chair Wood? We've
Vice
got
Chair Wood.
Carey, we've got Katie. Katie, will you respond to that? Thank you.
Sure, and I'll get a little bit into the weeds. So usually when we use the term personally identifiable information, most people are thinking about their name, their grade level, their birth date, those kinds of things, which definitely are all personally identifiable information. Some types of personally identifiable information are less obvious. In this case, it's a unique student identifier that we maintain here at our agency. So the short answer to your question is yes, PII will be shared. Will it be student name, student number? No, it's not that type of PII, not the kind that you would think of that is exchanged at a school level, for example. But yeah, technically this is PII because it is it's directly related and tied back to a student. Does that answer your question, Member Kelly?
Just for clarification then, so like teachers, faculty, they have a cactus number. This is similar to the cactus number for students, and so
Yes. Mm-hmm.
that's the only personal identifiable information that this researcher will have access to?
I'm going to say yes. It is also the case that other types of information in combination can identify a student. So let's say this data set was accidentally disclosed, which is not the intention. Someone in a school community, for example, could say, oh, I see that this student has, a special ed indicator and they are an English language learner. So they could maybe deduce, oh, I think that's probably this kid because I know that this kid in my school has those indicators. So there's potential for identifying the students in that way. But that aside, yeah, the primary identifier is this student underscore ID.
Thank you. I've got Member Earl, then Member Lear.
Yeah. Just a couple of things. I mean, the outcome of this is to measure what we've spent a lot of money in doing in the state of Utah. So I think the personal identifiable information, which is scores of, the outcomes of the investment that we've made in early literacy, right? To me, that you can't do that with actually figuring out whether there's been outcomes, right? Productive outcomes or not. And then that would inform policy. For me, this is one of the better research projects I've seen that have come through the board in a long time. It answers some questions. Are we going in the right direction or not? And I'm kind of hoping not that the individual data gets leaked, but I'm hoping the outcomes get leaked, meaning that they're usable, and whether they're beneficial, that we can make some policy decisions from that. So this is one of those that I feel like, and with the constraints, it's not going to third-party providers. I feel like they're going to get some really good information from this. So I'm in support of this item.
Thank you. Member Lear.
And just go back to Member Kelly's point, and just to make sure I'm understanding and to say it a little more simply than you did, that technically the only connection is to the student identifier, which a person would have to be intimately involved in this office to be able to connect the student identifier to the student. So it's a limited scope of people who would have access to that information. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct.
And then, as I recall, it's not so much the results of this would have to be leaked. As I recall, our discussion that this information would be shared with the State Board of Education and be able to inform our future decisions about these issues. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. That's actually written in on page 14. The researcher, in this case, Liz Bernfeld, she's committed to share her publication, and so she's actually assuming this passes, she's kind of contractually obligated to share
Right.
back the results with the board.
Which was
Thank
very
you.
persuasive for me also, as with Member Earl. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, board members. The motion then before the board is that the board approve the data sharing agreement with Liz Bernfeld, USBE 250070RA. Let's go ahead and vote. Member Green,
Yes.
thank you. That passes 11 in favor, 2 in opposition, those coming from Member Brenton and Member Bogus. Back to you, Chair Carey.
Thank you. The next item before the board is item 6.6, R277609, Standards for LEA Discipline, Plans, and Emergency Safety Interventions, incorporated document. And the motion before the board is that the board approve R277609, incorporated by reference document, Least Restricted Behavioral Interventions, LRBI, Technical Assistance Manual, Draft 3, on second and final reading.
Thank you. The motion before the board then is that the board approve R277-609 incorporated by reference document, Least Restricted Behavioral Interventions, LRBI, Technical Assistance Manual, Draft 3 on second and final reading. I've got Member Bogus, then Member Lear.
Well, wait. I thought we were doing 609. Are we doing the LRBI? Oh, I'm going to let somebody else talk first.
Member Lear?
Thank you. I'm willing to support this document, but I have to say, I did not like the changes to some terminology that the field is very responsive to and familiar with. I, in fact, called 4 school districts, 2 charter schools, and all of them gave me a version of what I'm going to say right now, and that is, we don't particularly care what you put in your document. We especially don't particularly care what your title of a section is. But let me just tell you that we're going to use trauma-informed. We're going to use restorative practices. That's the language in our training. That's the language that our employees understand. So we'll be using that, and that's the way we understand these particular issues. Every one of these LEAs that I talked to said some version of this. Some were more articulate, some were more emphatic, but they recognize that this is just playing with words and that they don't feel committed to doing that same manipulation, that they feel comfortable using the language in their training materials that they're familiar with and that their employees are familiar with. So I'm reluctantly supportive of this. It needs to go out to the field, but understanding that I think the field knows at least as much about this and is more conversant with the terms that are within the document, that have traditionally been within the document, than perhaps some board members are.
Thank you. Member Bogus.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I'm just trying to find it. You want these moved, Jenny, one at a time? All right, I would move the proposed changes to the LRBI Draft 3. It is a, I don't know if I want to call it a gridded document. This is page 7, page 14, 15, 15 through 18, etc. It's entitled Proposed Changes to Draft 3.
Is it in our backup?
Yes.
There, that's
Do we, yeah, we need it. Well, I'm not even sure what the motion is. I'm going to be honest with you. So, yeah, I'd like to be able to restate the motion, just not sure what it is or how much I'm going to be reading here before we get a second.
I think it should say the proposed changes to Draft 3 as cited in the document. I don't know exactly what you want.
Member Bogus, waiting on you to make sure this motion is where you want it.
I don't know, do we know what document we're talking about? So technically, I'm happy to accept credit, but technically this is not my document. This document was provided by our staff. But these are the changes. We've met with staff, we've met with a number of board members, and
Well, let's jump back to the motion. We'll put the motion before the body, see if we can get a second, and then we'll speak to that. So,
I'll second.
okay, let's put a motion out there. The motion is that the board approve the proposed changes to Draft 3 as cited in Member Bogus's supplementary revisions available on Civic Clerk. It is titled LRBI Changes, Bogus, May 2025 Final - Google Docs. Member Green, are you still a second?
Yes, thank you.
Back to you, Member Bogus, to speak to your motion.
thank you. Yeah, so we met with staff, we met with some board members, and these, I think, are good and powerful changes that reflect more of what really happens inside our classrooms. Some is a little bit expanded, some has been adjusted for clarity. We've addressed some things, for example, 57 through 58. There are some changes related to environment, and interestingly enough, a scholarly article was just published and circulated and trended on Twitter saying that that's some of the best things we can add in there in terms of helping kids. And then the rest of this, I think, just focuses on ensuring that we are not attributing things like immutable characteristics or life itself as a feature of trauma. And then there are some grammatical issues in this document, as well as other query. Not all of these were added by me. This was a group effort, but I think hopefully that explains those amendments, unless Member Bollinger or Member Earl have other things to add.
Well, we've got lights from Member Davis, Earl, then Booth. So Member Davis.
I have an amendment that is separate from this. So do you want me to keep my light on, or
I'll keep you in the queue once we vote.
so take it off?
Member Earl?
Yeah, regarding the LRBI manual, just in general, I appreciate all the dialogue with staff, community members, board members. These were some additional thoughts that were brought after last month, and just being able to engage and really narrow things to a good spot. And I think that these amendments do that. So I'm speaking in favor of this motion.
Thank you. Member Booth?
As I have read through this document, my question over and over again has been, what is the response of staff? I haven't really, I heard just now from Christina that they have been involved in the process. Are they resistant, perhaps in ways similar to what board member has referred to from the school districts or from the charter schools that board member Lear spoke with? Or are they good now that they've had the chance to discuss and look at all of these various suggestions and recommendations? I don't know who needs to answer that, because I don't know who knows.
Well, I'm not sure if any staff is going to be willing to come up and be like, no, I don't like this, or yeah, I'm on board. You know what I mean? I think that's a tough. Dr. Voorhees can offer an overview. Sid did it. I know you can. Sorry, Leah.
Thank you, Chair. Leah Voorhees, Deputy Superintendent of Student Achievement. So to both Board Member Earl and Board Member Mogus's points, we have spent a lot of time, and staff members have spent a lot of time with about half of the board now, half of board members individually or in small groups working on the language. And we appreciate the collaboration. We recognize all the work that has come from outside, from LEAs related to the language. To Board Member Lear's point, we have heard similar discussion from LEAs that teachers don't necessarily understand why language is being proposed to be changed, but at the same time, staff recognizes that the collaboration has gotten us to a point that we think is approvable. Was that a reasonable response to your question, Board Member Booth?
Thank you.
Looks like yes. Superintendent Dixon?
I'm just going to say it in plain language. I think oftentimes when the board really wrangles and works on changes, staff prefers perhaps the original document or what's been, iteration 1 or 2. And by the time it gets to 3 or 4, it's like, can we live with this? I mean, that's sort of where we try to get to in compromise, right? So I think that's what I'm hearing from staff, is that it's livable, not preferable, but livable. And that's better than we can't use this. Is that fair? Staff, is that fair? I'm seeing nods. Okay.
Thank you. Member Bollinger, then Vice Chair Wood.
Thank you, Chair. As everybody's kind of spoken to today, this has been a long process. We've spent hours and hours, and a lot of board members have been involved, a lot of staff members have been involved, and I do want to express my gratitude to staff and the extra hours that they've put into being open to this discussion. And, you know, I think this is kind of an example where all of us are trying to represent different constituents that have different voices and different needs, and sometimes, you know, we have to find a way to be able to move forward as long as we can provide guidance for our schools and our districts and make sure that they are able to provide the services and supports for students. And that's what is the most important. Is I've spoken to several of the schools and districts in my area. You know, when we talk about words, they may not use the exact same words in their trainings. However, the content and the details are really what mattered to them in the document. And so with that, I do support the proposed changes on this document and would encourage us to move forward.
Thank you. Vice Chair Wood.
I just have one specific, if I might, to Deputy Superintendent Voorhees. Thank you. I'm reading Elise Newey, and it's like really messing me up. I'm like, sorry. I'm like, that is not. Sorry. I'm sorry. My brain. On the, I guess this is, I don't know if they're page number, but there's one change there, just a question that I'd love to have a better, deeper understanding on the coercion cycle versus power struggles. It's changing any place where coercion cycle is 15 through 18 is what it says. It's changed to power struggles. And as I've looked at it, it's like coercion cycle is an actual process. There's an actual content that aligns with that, where I look at power struggle and I'm not finding the same thing. Can you help me understand the benefit of this change specifically?
Chair, thank you. Yes, so as you say, exactly as you say, coercion cycle is the name and the process that is used in the field to represent what happens when individuals get, when there is a power struggle and but a coercion cycle includes a power struggle, but is actually broader than just a power struggle. It's the individual who is trying to get their need met, and the individual who either like the child who's trying to get whatever their need met, the adult who is trying to ensure compliance or ensure that there is not a lot of disruption, and the cycle that they go through to be able to both of them accomplish their desire and their need. And a power struggle it can be seen as part of it, but the coercion cycle is actually bigger and broader than just a power struggle. Does that respond to your question?
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, well, actually, I'd actually like to move to strike that section of the 15 and 15 through 18 and maintain this coercion cycle.
So there's an amendment to, let's just make sure we get that motion up there. Member Wood, Vice Chair Wood. This is it. So the motion is that the board strike the amendment regarding the coercion cycle. To strike power struggle
And maintain coercion cycle.
and maintain coercion cycle. And do we have a second? A second from Member Lear, Vice Chair Wood.
Oh, I think the clarity was there with Superintendent Voorhees, so thank you.
Thank you. Speaking to the motion now, the amended motion, Member Bogus.
Yeah, I would just speak against the motion. This is language that's not really used in the field. I think I probably asked 60 teachers and not one of them knew what it was. The language in the field that is used is the power struggle. And when we produce a document from this board and it doesn't match what is occurring real time in classrooms, it becomes disconnected, and then it's a document that remains unused. And if that's our goal, then I think keeping that language in there is good, but that's not something that is really talked about. Maybe it is by BCBAs, but by everyday educators in the classroom. They talk about the power struggle and the concepts and the steps within the power struggle, how to mitigate it, how to avoid it, and how to end it. And so, and even one of our staff members articulated in conversation that she had never heard of the coercion cycle until she came to Utah. In a broader context, even outside of our state, it's just not language that is used in real time in the classroom. And so I would recommend that we keep those changes. We had really good, well thought out discussions about them. And I would recommend that we keep the changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Bogus. If the term coercion cycle remains in the document, would the changes within the document need to be readdressed? Or would it not change anything? You know how there's always domino effects. I shouldn't say always. There are sometimes domino effects. Would this create domino effects? And Leah, I guess I'm asking you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm going to say honestly, I would have to, do a quick search through the document. That is the section that explains the coercion cycle. Those pages, I think there may be a couple other references to it, so we'd have to do a find and replace. But the content, this is where it is housed.
Thank you. So the motion before the board then is that the board approve that the board strike power struggle and maintain language about the coercion cycle on pages 15 through 18. Let's go ahead and vote. Member Green?
No.
Okay. That motion fails. 7 in favor, 7 in opposition. Those in opposition being Member Green, Member Carey, Member Hall, Member Kelly, Member Earl, Member Brinton, and Member Bogus. So we're back here to our original motion. And the motion then before the board is that the board approve the proposed changes to draft 3 as cited in Member Bogus's supplementary revisions available on Civic Clerk titled LRBI Changes Bogus, May 2025 Final Google Docs. Let's go ahead and vote.
Member Green is a yes.
Thank you, Member Green. That passes unanimously. We have another amendment from Member Davis.
Thank you. I had about 10 amendments, but I had sent them to the committee. They didn't get seen in time because it was such a quick turnaround when we got it in the first place. And I don't want to take a lot of time on the board, so I picked my most salient of the 10. And I move that we require LEAs to document 504 plans in writing and distribute to all teachers of the student.
Let's go ahead and make sure that motion is clear on the screen.
I would second that, but I have a question.
And Member Davis, will you keep an eye on that and let us know when that motion is correct?
Sure. and I'll speak to it. If Member Bogus is second, maybe your question is dependent on your second. No. Okay, then
Okay.
I can go ahead and speak
So
to it.
is this, well, is this,
You could say to the students, teachers, yes, that'd be fine.
okay.
And
so
I'm not
the-
particular about the language of it. It just, there is a section about 504 plans in the LRBI manual, and wherever staff feels it's appropriate to incorporate it, it can be incorporated. This is not required federally, but it is almost impossible to implement a 504 plan with fidelity if you don't see it, and especially in our secondary schools. When a child has 8 teachers, you can't have an administrator say, hey, this child has, these 3 504 accommodations. I mean, I think the typical practice is you probably are writing it, but I'll be honest, as a parent also of a child with a 504 plan, sometimes the info just doesn't get to the end of the row, and so it becomes a little harder to communicate with everybody. So this, I think, is really important and something at a state level we should be requiring.
Thank you. Member Bogus.
Thank you, sir. So to the maker of the motion, I honestly didn't realize people weren't doing this,
Same.
because I have access to hundreds of 504s, literally. And so my question would be, do we need to include or other appropriate personnel? Does our staff do that? Because you can't implement a 504 if, for example, the para in the classroom doesn't understand the accommodations. I'm not saying release the documents, but I am wondering if this language needs to be more specific.
Member Davis, response?
I see it kind of more as following the IEP. I mean, if there is a related server, that person would receive a copy as well. So I don't know if maybe we need to include that in. Would the language be related servers?
So,
I don't know. How do we do it with IEP?
Leah, Dr. Voorhees.
Thank you, Chair. So the response would be all the teachers and service providers, and that would account for the paraeducator that was involved, any related service providers.
And parents. So I guess we would need to add both of those.
Would you
So-
like me to make that amendment, or should it go without objection?
Without objection, I would just add documents to the students, teachers, parents, and service providers. But there might be an objection.
There might be. Let's get it up there and we'll
I would not
see.
object to that as the seconder.
So there's an amendment to the motion, and the amendment is to add or include parents and service providers. Is there any objection to this amended edition? Seeing none,
Matt, I don't necessarily have an objection, but I do have a comment related to that wording that I'd like to ask maybe before.
if there's no objection, this is the new motion that we're discussing, and then we can amend however we want. Is that fair? Okay. So we are, I think we're on to you, Member Lear. Are you? Okay, Member Lear.
I don't claim to be an expert in 504s, but I do know quite a bit about it, and I hate to keep piling on Leah. But my understanding is sometimes, my understanding is that sometimes not every teacher needs that information. In fact, there's sometimes the feeling that the teacher is better off, or a teacher is better off without it. If I'm misunderstanding that or misremembering it, because my thought is maybe appropriate should be added. But I just would like to hear from Leah on this as opposed to me playing expert.
Leah, are
Posing.
you good to respond?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Appropriate could work. I think for the reason that you stated. I think the con, so that would be the pro. The con for appropriate would be to what I believe is Board Member Davis's purpose, that everybody actually knows about it, has it in hand, and can follow it. That the individual who is determining what is appropriate and or who is appropriate and who is not appropriate might determine that nobody needs it, just like had been happening previously. I think that would be the con. Obviously, that's a policy question.
But to just follow up briefly, your advice in your role would be to just any risk that somebody might get it that doesn't need it is less important than making sure everyone knows who could help the student. So with that, that's what I wanted to know from
Chair, may I add one more thing? So just for the board to consider, this amendment might make more sense in the actual rule than in the LRBI. It could certainly be added to the LRBI and then added to the rule. And what you're looking at is incorporating the document into the rule, but if it's not also in the rule, I think there's a possibility, and Deputy Newey agrees, that it would get lost. Does that make sense? Just a thought.
Member Davis, maker of the motion.
Yeah, I think that I agree, and I was just saying this is incorporated by reference, so it is binding, and we can move forward with this today. And then when that rule is up for re-evaluation, that is it next? Oh,
It's our
then
next
then
agenda
if this
item.
passes, we could add it there as well. And then I would feel comfortable without objection saying distribute all documents to the listed students, teachers, parents, and service providers. That way, if there's a broken leg and only the PE teacher needs it, then it can just go to the PE teacher. Is that appropriate? Does that make?
So the amendment, there's an amendment to this amended motion here, and you're requesting to include to the listed students, teachers.
So they can list on the 504 plan which teachers
Okay, so we're going to add,
need the accommodations.
we're
need
going to add
implement.
listed after students.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound right?
The students, let's see, document for let's put it at the end, listed on the plan. Let's put it at the end, listed on the plan, as listed on the plan, or listed on the plan, and then they can list the teachers that need to incorporate those accommodations.
So the amendment would be to add at the end of this motion, as listed on the plan.
Yes.
Is there any objection to this?
Is that the language they're going to use in the document?
Is there any objection?
Then we need to make it grammatically correct if they're going to put that actual language in the document.
Well, grammatize it. Is that a word?
We have takeout, and you could just do parents, comma, service providers. Oh no, it would be and teachers, parent. It's a little clunky, but what needs to change? It seems.
Well, as listed on the plan is technically modifying the document listed on the plan. It needs to modify it.
I think it modifies the teachers, parents, and providers.
Then it should come before.
So read how you think it should sound.
All individuals listed on the document.
Okay.
I think our staff can do it, but just as long as it's grammatically.
That's I'm
Okay.
just seeing if there's any opposition to adding this as listed on the plan.
If there's a better way to say it, I think it's fine if staff says it the most easily understandable ways, or it might be said in 4 sentences. I don't know, but just conceptually, I think we need to require that it's done.
Okay. So, Member Brenton.
I just wondered if it could just say, and relevant service providers with a stop there. And then it doesn't restate plan, because plan's before.
Okay. Member Davis, will you, this is your motion.
Yep, you got it. Who's driving? Thank you, group.
Okay,
That
so
looks great.
there is a proposal to amend the motion to read that the board require LEAs to document 504 plans and distribute all documents to the students' parents and relevant teachers and service providers. Is there any objection to the amendment to this motion? Seeing none, this is now the motion. Over to Member Carey.
Thank you, Chair. A quick question, possibly to the maker of the motion. It says that the board require LEAs to document 504 plans. It's my understanding they're already required to do that. They don't have to document.
Member Davis, sorry, you're not on your microphone, and let's get the question out, and then we'll get a response. Go ahead.
So there's no federal or state requirement that 504 plans be documented? That doesn't seem.
I learned this by reading the LRBI manual. That's when I learned this. I didn't realize that as well, but I think we need to require that that is documented. It needs to be put in writing and given to the teachers if they're expected to implement the accommodations. And if parents are expecting these to be done for their kids at home, everyone needs to be on the same page. I think it's pretty much standard practice, but
We're just codifying.
this is
putting the
this
rule.
is making it, yeah,
Okay.
official.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So the motion before the board then is that the board require LEAs to document 504 plans and distribute all documents to the students' parents and relevant teachers and service providers. Seeing no lights, I'm going to go ahead and just speak against this because I'd rather see it in the rule than the LRBI manual. So if my vote is a no and you guys are like blown back, that's why, right? Nobody's ever been blown back by a vote, but anyway. Okay, so one last time, the motion is that the board require LEAs to document 504 plans and distribute all documents to the students' parents and relevant teachers and service providers. Let's go ahead and vote.
Member Green is a yes.
Thank you, Member Green. That passes 13 in favor, 1 in opposition being from Member Hymas. So that's our amended motion. Seeing no other lights, we are going to go back to the original motion, and that is that the board approve R277-609 incorporated by reference document, least restricted behavioral interventions, LRBI, Technical Assistance Manual Draft 3 as amended on second and final reading. Member Bogus.
I would like to amend the motion. And in addition, approve the grammar and formatting changes as documented and outlined in the formatting and grammar changes document uploaded in board backup.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay. Member Bogus, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so I know we all read this, but I'm just going to be frank. When I read it, it was extremely painful to read because it had more than 3,000 gum errors in it. And I know that it's long. I get that. But just as an example, there are sentences in this document that ring to the tune of, in the trees, the children played in the trees. And those are errors coming out of the State Board of Education that absolutely should not be there. There are many sentences that have multiple appositives, modifiers, split infinitives, words that should be hyphenated that are not. And And so I went through, and it's a verbose document. There's some words that were just superfluous. There were some phrases, for example, the word problem behavior was misspelled almost 200 times. And so I have a document there if you want to check it out. It's merely gum. That's all it is grammar usage and mechanics. And then it outlines there below staff, and I made this list together. This really does need an index for ease of use. We need to highlight and bold certain information. There's a lot of IE and EG that's not appropriately used. Split infinitives, infinitive verbs, things like that. And so if we can approve this document and instruct our staff to make those changes, I would appreciate it.
Member Earl?
Yeah, I just think it is important for the body to know that when we finish documents, they do go through. We have a professional editor that we have hired, and I think that there's a lot of great recommendations in here, and that's why to kind of highlight those and take some of those into consideration. So I agree, we want the best product coming out. So I would speak in favor of this addition.
Member Lear?
I would never disagree that we want grammatical errors fixed and found and never have any more. But I think this is the kind of thing that we don't need a motion on. I feel like I will be voting no because I think we can just ask staff to do this and consider it done. And I think they will. I trust them. And I think it is something that follows the final publication of this kind of a document. So I feel like it's something we can just ask staff to do and not have to give them a directive like this. So I'll be voting no.
Member Bogus?
So just in response to that, this is a huge document. It's been before this board in my time, I think, 3 times. And it still has errors from the first time that it was brought before this board. And we were told they're going to fix them. And here it is the 3rd time back, and they're still not fixed. And so I think we do need a motion. I think we need clarity in what we're asking our staff to do. And we are the State Board of Education. And if we cannot produce a document of high caliber that is free of grammar usage and mechanics errors, in my opinion, it should have come to committee without those. And now we are approving a document that has over 3,000 errors that just I found, and I'm sure I'm not perfect. So if we're going to approve the document, I think we need to have specific instructions that these things are an expectation of this board and that the caliber of work that we put out is top-notch. I think it's important, and I think it's time to say it, because if these errors are remaining from 2 iterations ago, clearly whoever is doing that work is either missing things or the work is not being done. And so I do think it's important that we put this in writing. I think adding an index is a huge thing to add to this for ease of use, and reorganizing the formatting to ensure, I don't know if you saw the picture, one of our staff members found that, because there are certain sections of this the field uses often, and there are certain sections they never ever read. And some never use it because they can't ever find what they're looking for. And it's huge and it's cumbersome. And if we're going to put it out there, I think we need to put forward the best possible product. Thank you.
The motion before the board then is that the board directs staff to make grammatical and formatting changes as requested in the backup
Can I
document.
make a comment, please?
Member Green, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't raise my hand there. I just am in favor of this motion as a person that, sends out product. There is a final review, and you would be remiss to send out your product and okay it after when you have a list of things that still need to be worked through. And so I would make the argument that we have board members that have put forward genuine effort to make our work polished. And that is part of our work. And we've also had staff that have helped assist in that endeavor. But to argue, oh, that happens after, 3,000 if that's what it is. Even if it's 10, we've seen how simple rearrangement of words shifts meaning. It would make sense to me that we make sure that what we're voting on today has already been addressed, not after the fact. You don't send out product when you know you have a list of things to fix. That thinking is completely backwards in the realm of industry and product design. Our products are words on a page, and the quality of this matters when our vote is placed. So I will be voting for this. And again, I'd like to acknowledge the genuine effort that comes from board members to address these things, to put in the work, and to help put forward quality documents that we can be proud of at the time that we vote for them.
Member Davis?
I'll be voting for this, Chair, because I also believe that we need to have quality documents. I appreciate this comes in a list of considerations for the technical writers that will be engaging in the next phase. I'm not sure where the balance lies, because I don't know that I necessarily want our content specialists engaging in time-consuming technical writing if we are going to go through the process of technical writing. So I don't know if, but I also see why they may not want to go through that process before it coming to the board substantively, because then we could change a bunch of things and then that could undo, what needs to be done again. So I just want it clear to the public that, we have an amazing staff, and I am grateful that they focus on the important content, and they have spent not hours, it seems like just countless amounts of time with board members trying to get this right substantively. And then I just want to note the precariousness of the timing between the technical writing and the editing and the changes board makes and where that should come, and not make it as if we want our staff to spend countless hours on the technical aspect if we have technical writers hired for those things that come after.
The motion before the board then is that the board directs staff to make grammatical and formatting changes as requested in the backup document, formatting suggestions.August 2025. Let's go ahead and vote.
Member Green is a yes.
Thank you, Member Green. Member Earl, are you voting on this one? That passes 10 in favor, 4 in opposition. Those in opposition being Member Carey, Member Reel, Member Lear, and Member Hymas. We are set to our motion then that the board approve R277-609 incorporated by reference document least restricted behavioral interventions LRBI Technical Assistance Manual Draft 3 as amended on second and final reading. Member Carey, or Chair Carey in this case.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be voting against this. My concern is that the motion made by Board Member Davis basically, it's my understanding it's going to create language that this body hasn't yet seen that will be included in the LRBI. And I don't mind if someone says, hey, I want to amend this to include this specific language, but I read the amendment as specifically saying, if you could, I don't see. Member Davis motion to amend that the board require LAs to document 504 plans and distribute. I agree with the message and I agree with the purpose, but again, there's no specific language that we're being called on to approve or disapprove. And because of that, I'll be voting against this motion.
Member Earl.
Are you asking that, because I can see where what your thinking is, that we also include that it's included in the rule here? or you want it in the rule before you approve the manual? I did miss the understanding.
Is this to Chair Carey?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think Board Member Earl is exactly right. We don't know because it's not specified. Like there was talk about, well, it needs to be in the LRBI manual, it needs to be in the rule. But as I read what we're approving, it doesn't give us any direction on where that should be, what the language should be. We just said as a body,
He's addressing something that can't be seen on Zoom, and so Member Green has been lost.
What are you interrupting?
But I think it's just a point of order. She can't see what Chair Carey is addressing, and so I don't know how to address
Charlie,
that.
I just can't see Member Davis's motion. I was just trying to get context for Member Carey's comment.
Okay, we'll have Jerry look at it. So back to, well, yeah, I was gonna say. Chair Carey, back to you.
as a body, we just said, look, we're not comfortable with technical staff putting in commas and periods and changing things. But at the same time, it's my understanding that what we're doing here is we're not approving specific language. We're approving an idea. And that idea is that LEAs need to document 504 plans and distribute all documents, but that's not language that I see in the LRBI manual or in board rule. So if we want to say that they need to do this, I would be more comfortable with this is the language that we are voting on rather than the notion that it be approved.
Thank you, Member Carey.
Thank you.
Member Earl?
So I guess I'm just thinking out loud. So I guess if we were to take this vote, postpone this till after the rule's done, and then the vote comes on this after, would put that in order. Is that, or not, we can just vote on this if that's the, okay, all right, just
Okay.
trying to make sure we're doing it in order, so.
So I've got Member Bogus and Member Lear.
Thank you, sir. I have one final amendment to the motion. I would like to see the main motion, please. Well, then I'll just make I guess it's an amendment, but to have it proofread by at least 3 board members before final publication.
Is there a second? The motion is to have R2776, or I'm sorry, the motion is to have the LRBI manual proofread by 3 board members before final publication. Member Bogus, speak to your motion.
Thanks. So I think it's important that we get extra sets of eyes on it. I think if you've ever done something of this magnitude with hundreds of pages, I think we're at 342 or 347. And I just think it's important that it comes back and we proofread it. There's been a series of incidents over the past few months where this board has approved things, they've gone out to the public, they've not been accurate. This is huge. This is a huge document. And I would volunteer to proofread it to make certain that it is free from gum errors. And so I think it's important that it come back, not necessarily to the full board for approval, but just that one last over to ensure that we've hit all of our marks. Thank you.
Thank you. The motion before the board then. Oh, Member Lear, go ahead.
This feels like a more holistic conversation. We have a child nutrition manual. We have a special ed manual. We have a transportation manual. We have this LRBI manual. Those are the ones I remember off the top of my head. if that would be the practice for all of them, then I think we ought to address that as a board, or the staff ought to address it with our new superintendent. But to single this one out and say, we need 3 board members to read this, at least was your initial motion, then I think that it's a bad way to run a railroad. So I would be opposing it only because it should be either a consistent practice for all manuals, which are equally important, or not necessarily for this one until we've had that discussion.
Thank you. Member Brenton.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just struggling a little bit. I know so much work has gone into this manual. Listening to what Member Lear said about feedback from districts and charter schools on, regardless of the wording, they're going to adhere to how they've been trained and that the words that they've been trained in. That's honest feedback that I, sense. But I also have heard from teachers, from educators, and who feel like their hands are tied behind their back, that they cannot hold students accountable. And so it feels still like this is really tied to restorative justice and things that don't move us in a positive direction for accountability and helping children rise. So anyway, with that, I'm just struggling and will probably be a no.
Thank you. So the motion before the board then is that the board require the LRBI manual to be proofread by 3 board members prior to publication. Let's vote.
Member Green is a yes.
Thank you, Member Green. That motion fails. 10 in opposition, 4 in favor. Those in favor being Member Brenton, Member Kelly, Member Green, and Member Bogus. The motion before the board is that the board approve R277-609, incorporated by reference document, least restricted behavioral interventions, LRBI Technical Assistance Manual, Draft 3 as amended on second and final reading. Let's vote.
Member Green is a no.
Public can't hear you. You're just. Yeah, I read as amended.
Okay. I'll let it go, Matt.
Well, there's nothing to hang on to. So let's restate the motion then, that the board approve R277-609, incorporated by reference document, least restricted behavioral interventions, LRBI Technical Assistance Manual, Draft 3 as amended on second and final reading. Let's go ahead and vote.
Member Green is a no.
Thank you, Member Green. That passes 10 in favor, 4 in opposition. Those in opposition being Member Green, Member Bogus, Member Brenton, Member Carey. And we are back to you, Chair Carey.
Thank you, Chair. The next item is 6.7. This is the rule R277-609, standards for LEA discipline plans and emergency safety interventions. This is the rule and an amendment. And the motion before the board is that the board approve R277-609, standards for LEA discipline plans and emergency safety interventions, rule draft 2 on second and final reading.
Thank you. The motion before the board then is that the board approve R277-609, standards for LEA discipline plans and emergency safety interventions, rule draft 2 on second and final reading. We've got Member Bogus, Davis, then Bollinger. Member Bogus.
Thank you, Chair. I would move that the board approve R277-609 draft 3. And with a second, I can explain to you all the whys, but it doesn't have many, there are actually no substantive changes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, back to you, Member Bogus.
So there were a series of grammar usage and mechanics errors in this one as well. So I fixed them all, and our staff has graciously prepared a third draft.
Thank you. So the motion then is, and member Davis and Bollinger, is this to this motion or is this to a different upcoming conversation? Okay,
Chair, would you like me to explain them?
that's up to you. You get to speak
It's
to it.
things like adding S's, putting a the where it needs to be, appropriate capitalization, hyphenated words, split infinitives, and the infinitive form of nouns to match the subject that was used.
Okay. Member Carey, to this motion or something else?
It is to this motion, Chair. In particular, it goes to lines 198 through 204 on draft 3.
If there's a question directed to you, then
No, this is perfect. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. So the
Look at us.
motion before the board then is that the board approve draft 3. Let's go ahead and vote. I'm sorry. We have some questions, but no microphones. Hit those lights. I will call on you. Member Bollinger, go ahead.
I just have a clarifying question. So are we actually approving the whole draft and the rule moving forward, or are we just going to be working from draft 3?
We would be working from draft 3.
Thank you.
Yes, that is a great clarifier. We would not, this is putting a new draft forward to work from. So the motion is that the board approve draft 3, or we could even say approve to work from draft 3, if that offers clarity, but that's Member Bogus's motion, so. But we are not, that is not the final motion. Member Bogus?
So in the draft that was provided in backup, there were multiple things that were missing, or maybe just one, actually. I apologize to you, that was missing from the committee motions. Was that incorporated into draft 3? And I think it was a date to the LRBI that was missing. It was a motion made in committee by Member Carey, and it wasn't in the draft that was in backup. I just want to make certain that, because I didn't double check it, I just said thank you. And so I appreciate your work on it. I just want to make certain that that motion out of committee made it into draft 3.
Yeah, Elise, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so it's in both draft 2 and draft 3 that are uploaded to Civic Clerk. Also, I will note that there was some of the capitalization that you recommended that are technical, so you don't see those as underlined, but those were updated in draft 3, so capitalization of board, for example.
Okay.
But the other changes are in green and purple on draft 3.
I do appreciate your work on that. I know I sent that to you yesterday afternoon, evening. Thank you very much.
Member Lear?
There is another gum error. Never heard that phrase before, but I can use it too. And I just lost the line. And it is on where the board was not capitalized and the phrase was board approved. So we might as well get them all. And I'm looking again. On line 92. Capital B. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Member Lear, was there a motion in there, or were you just pointing out some?
If that needs to be a motion and a vote, then great, I'll do that. Otherwise, I would just like to call it to the attention.
Well, I know it's been mentioned before. I'm going to speak openly. I hate spending time on this. This is,
If we're going to do it, shouldn't we do it right?
I guess, yeah. I know. I'm gonna go back to quiet mode. Member Brenton.
this is just an error as well. That's a little confusing to me in reading the document where it says draft 3 at the top with the June 5th date, and then every other page says draft 1, April 29th. Could that just be changed to reflect everywhere that it's draft 3?
Is that a question for staff? And that, I mean, if it's draft 3, we'll update it to draft 3. This is where I guess I'm struggling, is that this is stuff that staff, we could easily just be like, hey staff, I noticed that board isn't capitalized, and they'd probably just change it. This does not require a majority vote of board members. So Member Earl.
I want a clarification. Grammatical errors, according to the writing standard, can be modified after we passed around. Things are sometimes modified just because when we send it up to admin rules, someone can clarify if it doesn't meet their, I don't know if standard's the right word, their protocols, it has to be changed. So I kind of in agreement that let's clean things up, but I think those things we're taking, that's not really a motion, that's more of a technical work that's to be done, and I think it could be pointed out. I think that's completely appropriate, but not as a motion for the board, I guess is what I'm thinking. That's work that's already done or could be done, and I think people would appreciate that, to be honest with you, if they see something.
Well, and from what I understand in this draft 3, we're seeing, we talk about words matter, we talk about grammatical, and we spent a lot of time on that. Even in this draft here, I'm using Vice Chair Wood's screen, but words such as that supports have been changed to thereby supporting, right? The competence of a student has been changed to students. That's more than grammatical to me. That's substantive, right? So for me, speaking to this motion, I speak against it. I think there's too much involved here. It's not as simple as a comma here or a comma there. And that's me speaking against it. Member Bogus.
Oh, thank you. So just a couple things. I understand that it gets cumbersome, but it's not being done after the fact. So we have two choices. We can get it done before it comes to the board. I guess we have three choices. We can get it done before it comes to the board, it can be done at the board, or it can be done after the board. But we have multiple rules on our website that are riddled with grammar usage and mechanics errors. And we're the State Board of Education, and I just think we should be putting out a higher level of product. And to your point in line 80, I don't think it is a substantive change because of the way it's worded. When we get to the language of the statement as a whole, student was changed to students to match the framework of the sentence. So if we want to keep the words a student, then we would need to modify the language of the sentence so that the object is singular as opposed to plural. But as it is written, the object of the sentence should be plural, and we have it as a singular. So to me, it was a technical error, not a substantive change. And so I understand your point of view, but I think we need to consider as a board what we're putting out there, because when we approve something, it's not being remedied on the other side. And so that backs it up a step and puts it during the board meeting. So just food for thought.
Member Carey.
I was really impressed with myself because today, after serving here for 2 years, I noticed a misspelling on the notice we have on the refrigerator. And then I heard Board Member Bogus found 3,000 errors. So I don't feel as proud, but anyone who wants to see that, it's still up on the refrigerator door.
It's not a public record.
No, right. Well, a little lower standard for the refrigerator door, but and I think that the discussion is one worth having, but I like what Board Member Lear had to say earlier, which is if this is systemic, and I'm not saying it is, I think staff do a great job with this, especially given, I know I was on email exchange with Director Rasmussen, early into the morning on some rule changes, but I do think that what we're seeing, if it's not limited to just this, then perhaps that is a broader discussion that we need to have. And I would welcome that discussion, the parameters and where it goes. But if the suggestion is that it's system-wide, then we need a system solution and not a rule-by-rule, let's rehash this. So I just want to say that I think this discussion is worth having. It has merit. I do like the idea that if there is a change, that it should be highlighted so we can see as a board where are these changes. Because what one person perceives, like Board Member Baga says, there are no technical changes. I don't know if that's correct or incorrect, but what may be technical to Board Member Bogus may be substantive to me. And if I can't look and quickly see those changes, it's very difficult to navigate. So I'm just saying that I think it's worthy of a broader discussion. Thank you, Chair, for entertaining that.
Thank you. Member Lear.
To tag along with that, tag on to that, which would include a study session on the administrative rule writing manual, because not everything that's grammatical is consistent with that manual. And for instance, some of the changes that are made in this particular document are not consistent with that manual. So if we're going to get into it, we better get into it. And I said that before, but to do it piecemeal is time-consuming, disrespectful of staff, and there will still be errors. But I am the first to say that maybe there's either a more subtle way to do this or a comprehensive way to do it. And I'm only half kidding when I say, let's study the 300-page rule writing manual and know that we should use singular words in a rule, for instance. We should never use et cetera in a rule. We should never repeat the law in a rule. So I feel like it's half-assed the way it is.
So the motion before the board is that the board adopt, we're not going to approve. Is that appropriate, Member Bogus? This is your motion, but we're adopting draft 3 for discussion. Okay. So the motion before the board is that the board adopt draft 3. Let's go ahead and take a quick vote.
Member Green is a yes.
Thank you, Member Green. That motion fails. 8 in opposition, 5 in favor, 1 abstention. Those in favor being Member Brenton, Member Kelly, Member Bogus, Member Hall, Member Green, the abstention coming from Member Davis. So this brings us back to a motion that the board approve R277-609 standards for LEA discipline plans and emergency safety interventions rule draft 2 on second and final reading. Member Bollinger.
Thank you, Chair. I just have one amendment that I would like to propose, and I think that, thank you, staff's bringing that up. I would like to make a motion that the board amend lines 105 to 106 to read, an LEA shall develop uniform and equitable methods for a school-level database evaluation of the efficiency and effectiveness of the policy on an annual basis, which may include a school safety or climate survey, and I would like to speak to that with a second.
We have a second. Go ahead and speak to that.
Thank you. The majority of that is already in the rule that we're proposing. The only portion of that that's being added is just that they, a couple of options that they can use. I'm concerned that every time we put something that they have to have a method for evaluating data, or I don't want districts or LEAs to think that they have to create a new way to track information or data on the effectiveness of their their school discipline. So just giving them options there, I think, is a good way to help them understand that it's something that they might be already doing, and thinking, instead of thinking, oh, we have to start a new policy or a new way to track this data. So that would be my proposal.
Thank you, Member Carey.
I have another motion, so it'll need to wait. Thank you, Chair.
Yep, Member Earl.
Give me just a second. I'm not sure what the change is exactly. So this is the amendment before us. So line 105, 106?
Yeah, let me
Sorry, I
restate.
might have a response, but I just have to look at it in context.
I'll restate as you're looking. So I didn't restate the motion. The motion before the board is that the board amend lines 105 to 106 to read 5, an LEA shall develop uniform and equitable methods for a school-level data-based evaluation of the efficiency and effectiveness of the policy on an annual basis, which may include a school safety or climate survey.
Thank you. I just wanted to understand exactly what was being added. I would speak against this motion. Some surveys are okay, and opening this up for some surveys that we just don't know, I guess they could use some of that information to make their decision anyways, but I think pushing in the direction of these surveys is not where I would lean. So I would speak against this motion.
Member Bollinger.
And just to clarify, the reason why it says which may include, I don't want to mandate these surveys. I think that needs to be decided at an LEA level as allowed by rule and policy. But again, I don't want them to think that they have to create something new if something that they have already in place can meet this requirement. Thank you.
Okay. So again, the motion before us is that the board amend lines 105 to 106 to read 5, an LEA shall develop uniform and equitable methods for a school-level data-based evaluation of the efficiency and effectiveness of the policy on an annual basis, which may include a school safety or climate survey. Let's vote. Member Green? That motion fails. Just so everybody is aware, Member Green did step off for a minute. We'll get her back. But that fails. 7 in opposition, 6 in favor. Those in favor being Member Reel, Member Davis, Member Booth, Vice Chair Wood, Member Lear, and Member Bollinger. So that brings us back to the motion that the board approve R277-609 standards for LEA discipline plans and emergency safety interventions rule, draft 2 on second and final reading. Over to Member Carey.
Thank you, Chair. And I believe this is what was referenced or going to be referenced by Member Bogus earlier, and those are lines 198 through 204. So during committee, there was a motion that did pass that was not included in the draft which was posted. Board Member Bogus in her draft 3 solved that omission, I believe, with lines 198 through 204. And so
I think if that came through committee, can we, without taking a vote, that should be on this draft too.
And it is.
And it is now.
Okay.
Okay.
And if that's the case, then I do not have a motion. Thank you, Deputy Newey.
Thank you. With that then, the motion again is that the board approve R277-609 standards for LEA discipline plans and emergency safety interventions rule, draft 2 on second and final reading. Let's vote. That passes 11 in favor, 2 in opposition. Those in opposition coming from Member Brinton and Member Bogus. And will you let me know when Member Green gets back online? Thank you so much. Back to you, Chair Carey.
Thank you, Chair. The next item is 6.8, R277-100, definitions for Utah State Board of Education rules. This is an amendment and continuation. And the motion before the board is that the board continue and approve R277-100 definitions for Utah State Board of Education rules, draft 2 on second and final reading.
Thank you, Chair Carey. The motion has been stated. Member Earl.
Yeah, I have a question first. The purpose of R277-100 is what? I'm just, it's
You're looking
the
at
staff
me.
member, yeah,
It's a
why do we do what, R277-100?
Why do we have use the
Yeah, that's-
definitions
yep,
instead of
yep.
just having them in the rule?
Yep.
Is there somebody with historical knowledge on that?
Had Jenny watched committee, she would know the answer.
Okay.
I think I know
Member
the answer.
Lear?
I'm just clarifying.
I can, unofficially, so I'll at least speak officially. I won't let her, I would ask.
At least you're going to take that one? Okay.
I can speak to what I know, which has less historical significance than Board Member Lear, but we use 100 for any definition that is used so often and so consistently that it's not worth, otherwise all of our definition sections would be quite long if we wanted to define every single. So things like school, for example, we have a standard definition of school, but then in a particular rule, if it does not include USDB, for example, then we'll clarify that in the specific rule that it applies to, if that makes sense.
Okay, I have a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
So I would like to strike social emotional learning from our Rule 100. We do not use it in our documents, and it's not repetitive.
The motion is to strike, is that on the screen here? It's coming. Member Earl, is that
That's
your
it?
motion?
Yep. And so it would be
motion-
the definite, yeah, social emotional learning and definition. I don't know if it needs, I guess it would be.
Yeah, the motion is to strike the definition for social and emotional learning
Oh, yeah, thank you. Sorry,
from R277-100.
yes.
And we had a second, and back to you, Member Earl, to speak to that.
If the purpose is it something that's repetitive throughout our documents in our rulemaking, then that we need clarification and exact definitions, then I can't find it in our rules. So,
Okay. Member Carey? Okay, so the motion is to strike the definition for social and emotional learning from R277-100. Let's vote. Member Green?
Yes.
This passes 10 in favor, 4 in opposition. Those in opposition coming from Member Booth, Member Davis, Member Lear, and Member Reel. Member Carey.
Chair, I have a motion, I believe it's on the board, and it involves line 192. And that motion would be to amend draft 2 and add this language that the board amend I'm requesting that the board amend beginning at line 192 to read as follows. C, developing intervention plans that prioritize protecting potential victims and address threatening behavior, and D, address underlying behavior contributing to the risk. And if I could speak to the motion.
Yeah, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Go back to you, Chair Carey.
Thank you. And the student threat assessment and the original language that was here, I think, was more indicative of this, but it seemed to equate behavior and conduct by the perpetrator, and he put them on the same footing as the victim. And we did a good job looking at that and coming up with language that I thought addressed it. But after meeting with individuals in the safety space, they thought that using the phrase prioritize protecting victims would more clearly delineate that there's a space between the perpetrator and the victim, that they are not equals in these instances, and they each have different obligations. So that is the primary change. And then in D, we're putting in behavior, and I believe removing the word circumstances, again, to make it more actionable. Thank you.
Thank you. The motion before the board then is that the board amend beginning at line 192 to read as follows. C, developing intervention plans that prioritize protecting potential victims and address threatening behavior, and D, address underlying behavior contributing to the risk. Just one question for the maker of the motion, if I could, without causing too much of a stir here. We're all potential victims, right? What is that? Can you speak to that language there?
This is under the section of threat assessment. What can we do to prevent? And so because this hasn't yet happened, that's why the language in the original rule was potential, because we're evaluating threats, not actions that have yet taken place. And originally I did have potential victims and victims, and the suggestion was made, leave it to potential victims, given where it falls under the rule.
Appreciate that
Thank you.
clarification. Thank you. So one more time, and we'll take a vote. The motion is that the board amend beginning at line 192 to read as follows. C, developing intervention plans that prioritize protecting potential victims and address threatening behavior, and D, address underlying behavior contributing to the risk. Let's vote.
Member Green is a yes.
Thank you, Member Green. That passes unanimously. Back to, or actually, no, we have an underlying motion here, and that the motion then is that the board continues and approves R277-100 definitions for Utah State Board of Education rules draft 2 as amended on second and final reading. Seeing no lights, let's vote.
Member Green is a yes.
Thank you, Member Green. That passes 12 in favor, 2 in opposition, those being Member Brinton and Member Bogus. Back to you, Chair Carey. Can I, yes, point of information, Member Earl. Let's get your light.
Lunch before we go to the next item. I just think it's going to be a little bit longer.
So,
it's almost 1.
Yeah, let me ask. This is scheduled to go to 1:15.
Oh, okay.
And lunch would begin at 1:15. I think all of us know that 123 is not going to be done in a day. Is that the So let me ask this, board members. We can continue. We can hold 1, 2, 3, and then finish out the rest of the committee report, and then readdress. And then we can, I hate to start a debate and then go to lunch and then pick up a debate and then move to tomorrow, right? So I'm trying to give us as much time as we all know that it warrants. So is there any objection to moving to 6.10 right now? And then before we close out the committee report, we do want to address 6.9. Seeing no objection, Chair Carey, thank you.
Thank you. Then we'll go to item 6.10, R277-303, Educator Preparation Programs, Amendment and Continuation. And the motion before the board is that the board continue and approve R277-303, Educator Preparation Programs, Draft 1 on second and final reading.
Thank you. The motion then before the board is that the board continue and approve R277-303, Educator Preparation Programs, Draft 1 on second and final reading. Any comments from that, Member Carey? Or you just queued up? Okay, let's go ahead and vote then.
Member Green is a yes.
Thank you, Member Green. That passes 12 in favor, 2 in opposition, those being Member Davis and Member Bogus. Back to you, Chair Carey.
Thank you, Chair. This is item 6.11, R277-313, student support licensing areas of concentration by amendment. And the motion before the board is that the board approve R277-313, student support licensing areas of concentration, draft 3 on second and final reading.
Thank you. The motion before the board is that the board approves R277-313, student support licensing areas of concentration, draft 3 on second and final reading. Member Earl.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve draft 4, and then I have an amendment to that.
So I'm going to use the verbiage adopt, if that's okay, so we don't approve draft 4.
Sorry. Yep.
Does that work?
Adopt, yep.
So there's a motion, a substitute motion.
Yes.
That the board adopt draft 4 on second and final reading. Do we have a second to that? A second. Who gave that? Sorry. Okay. Member Bogus. Sorry, I thought Jenny did. I was like, you can't do that. That's
It's a little tranquility.
Back to you, Member Earl.
Yeah, then I have an amendment reaching out to staff and some other constituents. Just the clarification in the. Should I put the motion?
Well, I'd like you to speak to, if I'm just
Yeah.
one person, but I'd love for you to speak to draft 4 before you make your amendment.
Yeah, just a couple things here. Just seeking some clarification. Sorry. Go down here. In the law, it talks about authorized personnel, and those are clearly spelled out in the law. And so the recommendation is to make sure we use that instead of having to list people out or list things. And so that's what's listed there. And also at the end here, just trying to articulate how the written consent and what those are for. Those are two different pieces, meaning that if you're providing mental health services, it's a very spelled out, this happens, this is the frequency, and it's spelled out in law. Whereas a school counselor, they would need to get parent consent for their services, but it's not the same requirement. And then also just make sure it was really clear. And this kind of came from committee, but also on instances where there's an immediate serious risk, just make sure that which we don't like to put all the legal language in there, but in this case, making sure there was clarification on that. So that's the, and then I have an amendment when.
So, yeah, I'll put you in the queue then. The motion then is that the board adopt draft 4 on second and final reading. I don't see any lights. Let's go ahead and vote.
No, I've got to amend it first. I have an amendment to the.
Adopt 4, yeah. Oh, yeah, we're not on, yeah. The motion is that the board adopt draft 4. Yeah, we're just adopting it to
Okay.
work from. We're not approving it. We're just adopting it. That's the motion.
Yeah, it should be, we just, a substitute motion. This substitutes out the other, but
Yeah,
didn't
and
quite get
now
that
everybody
right.
has to vote on whether they want to accept that substitution. That's where I am. Go ahead.
Actually, I believe you're wrong. I suppose if we amended our bylaws, we could do that, but technically, per Robert's rules, you just make a substitute motion, and then the substitute motion stands as the main motion, and you just amend that as if it were a main motion. You
Sure.
don't need to adopt it and then move on it.
Let's do it then.
Okay. So I have an amendment to line 85 and 87. It would refer back to, so it'd say authorized personnel, and then it would
Point of
strike.
clarification?
Yeah.
How can we be amending a draft that we haven't adopted or substituted or?
That's
Like I say,
a
it seems
great
like-
question that I was just corrected
Am I
on.
wrong? I thought the substitute motion now became the primary motion.
But we have to vote on something, don't we?
Well, so what will happen is, if I'm understanding correctly,
actually, I
that we,
think you may be right.
Because
we-
my motion
yeah.
was to forward the draft that came out
Right.
of committee.
Yep. I
Yes.
think you're right.
So that's what I understood as well. But if there's a parliamentarian that tells me otherwise,
I think.
right,
think you're
I
right,
would
yeah.
prefer setting down a base of a draft before we start cutting it up.
Right, that's right. I was not thinking clearly.
Member Bogus?
So once that substitute motion is made, then you are working on that draft.
But it has to be voted on. That's what we haven't done, and that's what they're saying.
So it does not have to be, not per Robert's rules. Once the secondary motion is made, you can amend it to your heart's content, and you can vote down all the amendments and then vote down the substitute motion, but you
Well,
don't
ask-
actually have to adopt
We
the
got to
draft.
ask our parliamentarian,
amend
because
it.
that may be right.
She's going to do some research.
You don't have to adopt it to amend it.
I'm gonna take some chair's initiative here, and it can be overturned. That's fine by me. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to, and that's why that's why I asked Member Earl to speak to draft 4. Is before we spend time amending draft 4, if the body doesn't want draft 4, then I'd rather not spend time amending it. So the motion that I would love to vote on is that the board adopt draft 4 for discussion, or, yeah. So, with that then, Member Bogus.
Did you just tell me that was a chair's ruling?
Yes.
Yeah, then I would appeal that ruling.
Okay. What's the order for appeal? Do we have that on hand? Is it a 2/3? Well, let's vote and see where it lies. Okay. So the motion then is, do you agree with the chair's ruling to move forward to vote to adopt draft 4, or not? That's the appeal. So, do we have that queued up?
Just want to make it clear, we're not voting if we think it's right or not. We're just voting that we're going to support your ruling.
Support the chair's ruling. I don't even want to say your. I don't want Matt Hymas involved at all. The chair's ruling. No, the chair's ruling.
Why is this on?
So when that's queued up for voting, we'll go ahead and vote. So yes to support, no to not support. Member Green. Yes to appeal.
Oh,
Is it yes to appeal or
No.
yes to support you? It's yes to appeal.
You threw me off, Kelsey. Okay, I can still. Yes is
So
to
we're-
appeal the chair's ruling. I'm saying this for the public and for
we're just
Member
deciding whether or not we want
Green.
even
Yes
go
to
on it.
appeal the chair's ruling, no to not appeal. Member Green, do you have a vote?
At this point,
Just to clarify, could you clarify what your ruling was again?
I know, you're fine. The chair's ruling was to vote on adopting draft 4 for discussion and amendments.
Yes.
Okay, Member Green is a yes. So we have, that motion fails, that appeal fails, 11 in opposition, 3 in favor. Those in favor, Member Green, Member Hall, Member Bogus. With that, let's go back to a motion of adopting draft 4 for discussion. Let's go ahead and vote on that. Member Green?
Yes.
Thank you, Member Green.
oh.
So this is draft 3? Draft 4. Which is one that came out of committee?
3 came out of committee. This is to adopt draft 4 so that we can have discussion on it. Okay, and did you get Member Green's, Member Brenton, did you get Member Green's? Yes, okay. Who are we missing?
It's going to go back to 3 anyway.
Oh, sorry, I thought I did.
Okay, that passes 13 in favor,
Why is it
1 in
going back?
opposition, being from Member Bogus. Over to you, Member Earl, for a motion.
I would like to amend lines, sorry, now I've got to find it again. Lines 85 through 87, and just use the reference that we have in law, which would be, it would say authorized personnel, and then strike a school counselor, school psychologist, social work, anyways, all of that, and then may provide mental health services. The authorized personnel is articulated in code already with those provisions.
So your motion then is that the board amend lines 85 to 87 of draft 4 to read authorized personnel may provide a mental health service in a school. Is that correct, Member Earl? Do we have a second?
What is the motion?
The motion, again, is that the board amend lines 85 to 87 of draft 4 to read authorized personnel may provide a mental health service in a school.
Should we provide a code reference?
We can, but authorized personnel is, if I can respond to that, if you go to the top of the document, it actually defines authorized personnel, so it has the code reference up there.
Do we need let's get a second, if there is one. We have a second, okay. And do you want to speak to that then, Member Earl?
Yeah, some, with 504s and just making sure the right personnel that are qualified to provide services are there, and those are articulated, just like I said, in the authorized personnel section of the law itself. So I think it just gets complicated the more we go, okay, you got to bring this person in here and this, and it's according to these things. So just keeping it clear is the reason for that, so.
Thank you. Vice Chair Wood?
Can I just ask a question to staff? Is there a difference in that line where it says who is dual licensed? Because the code does not reference dual licensing. Is there anything unique to that specific line?
Is that to Member Earl, or Leah? Go ahead.
Chair, would you like me to respond?
Please.
Leah Voorhees, Deputy Superintendent of Student Achievement. It is important because currently DOPL does not actually have a license for a school psychologist. So the language that would exist without this amendment makes it impossible for a school psychologist to provide this required service. So this language is really supportive of what needs to happen in schools to ensure 504s and IEPs are legally implemented. Did that respond to your question?
This language, meaning the current
amendment.
language, the amendment is critical.
The amendment is critical.
Thank you. That is what I needed to know.
Thank you. So the motion then is that the board amend lines 85 to 87 of draft 4, my apologies, to read authorized personnel may provide a mental health service in a school. Let's vote.
Member Green is a no.
Thank you, Member Green. That passes 11 in favor, 3 in opposition. Those no votes coming from Member Brinton, Member Bogus, and Member Green. This takes us back to our underlying motion, and that is that the board approves R277-313 student support licensing areas of concentration draft 4 as amended on second and final reading. Member Lear?
I have a question, I think, for Leah. I'm going to have to buy her like something really special at the end of this meeting. I'm trying to make sense of, because we just added in mental health services for authorized personnel. Now on line 57, it talks about an educator with a student support license area. Could that be an authorized person? Because if so, then why would we strike mental health on line 75?
Dr. Voorhees, please.
Chair, I'm not quite following. Can
Okay,
you restate?
Okay, yes. So I'm eventually going to line 75, but to get to the top of the section, it talks about an educator with a student support license, may. And I'm trying to figure out if an educator with a student support license could be or is an authorized person under that definition.
Yes, okay, thank you. I understand now. So authorized personnel is more limited than a student support license. A school counselor, for instance, has a student support license, but according to the code, according to the statute, is not authorized personnel. So authorized personnel is more narrow.
Okay, so it would be accurate, it's not a matter of opinion.
Correct.
That the educator with the student support license shouldn't provide mental health service.
Correct.
I just wanted to make sure it was stated and not just an opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Earl?
Yeah, and that's the reason why the authorized personnel is so important, because otherwise you open up the scope for we just broadened the scope for school counselors to provide mental health services, which they're not qualified to provide. So the authorized personnel is key and critical to making sure it's the personnel that are trained and have the expertise in this area.
Thank you. So the motion before the board then is that the board approves R277-313 student support licensing areas of concentration, draft 4 as amended, on second and final reading. Let's vote. Member Green?
Yes.
Thank you. That passes unanimously. Chair Carey.
Thank you, Chair. Item 6.12, R277631, student toilet training requirements via amendment. And the motion for the board is that the board approve R277631, student toilet training requirements, draft 1, on second and final reading.
Thank you. The motion before the board is that the board approve R277-631, student toilet training requirements, draft 1, on second and final reading. Seeing no lights, let's vote. On this one? Yeah, I was going to say, start the debate on the most exciting.
Member Green is no.
Thank you, Member Green. That passes 13 in favor, 1 in opposition, that coming from Member Green. I want to go back to Chair Carey, but let me just propose something in order to stay with flow. We do have lunch here. Could we take lunch and then come back and tackle 123? Is there any opposition to that? We good with that? Okay, so let's set a 30-minute timer and we are breaking for lunch. Thank you.